The cup shattered before I realized I had let it slip, porcelain against tile, a sound sharp enough to wake ghosts. For a moment, I thought it was just the sound of another morning, coffee, routine, silence, until I turned and saw Thomas. He stood there, framed by the doorway, his skin pale, eyes rimmed red as though he'd been staring into something terrible. He wasn't angry. That's what frightened me most. Thomas, I said softly. What's wrong? He didn't answer. Just dragged his hand through his hair, that nervous, desperate gesture that used to belong to his father, and suddenly David was in the room again. The ache, the emptiness, the way grief makes every breath feel borrowed. When Thomas finally spoke, his voice trembled like paper burning. I tried to push it aside. Mom. I really did, but I can't keep pretending anymore. Pretending what? That we're okay, that time fixed anything? I moved closer, my heart an unsteady drum. What are you talking about, Thomas? That's when he pulled it out. A folded, time-stained envelope, soft at the edges. The paper looked like it had waited years to be found. I discovered it in the workshop, he said. It's from Dad, addressed to you. My knees weakened, the air thickened. That workshop had been a graveyard of memories, boxes, photographs, the smell of old wood and loss. And yet, I'd missed this. How long have you had it? I asked, my voice barely surviving the question. 7 days, he whispered. I didn't know if you were ready. Ready. As if anyone could ever be ready to hear from the dead. The refrigerator hummed behind us, the same low mechanical heartbeat that filled the house after David died, and for a long time that was the only sound between us. Why now? I finally managed. Thomas lifted his eyes, the same gray as his father's. Because I'm not ready either, but maybe this letter is the only way we can heal. The envelope trembled in my hands. My name, Margaret, written in David's sharp, deliberate handwriting. It felt alive. It felt cruel. I couldn't open it. Not yet. The weight of it pressed against my palm, a secret begging to rewrite the past. Afternoon blurred, light moved slowly across the floor and every corner of the house became an echo. The dent on the hallway wall from moving furniture, the faint coffee ring near the faucet, the creak of the old chair by the window. All of it breathed David, and the letter, always the letter, sitting in my lap, quiet and dangerous. When Thomas appeared again, the sun was setting, the sky looked like something set on fire. Do you want me to stay? He asked softly. I nodded yes. We sat shoulder to shoulder, his warmth next to mine. The envelope tore open like skin splitting. The paper inside was delicate, edges browned by time. David's voice returned through ink and memory. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to say what I should have every day. You will care for Thomas, I know that. But before you make any decisions about the house, I stopped reading. The words swam. Decisions about the house. Thomas leaned closer. Keep going, he whispered, but my eyes refused to move forward because I could already feel it. Whatever came next was going to change everything. Endless night later, after Thomas had gone to bed, I sat alone by the window, the letter half open, the air trembling with what hadn't yet been read. Outside, the wind brushed the glass like fingertips. Inside, the clock measured grief in seconds, and I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes it's not the words that hurt. It's the silence between them. The sentence stopped mid-breath. You'll understand what I mean when you see her name. And then nothing, just the empty white of the page staring back at me. I flipped it over, desperate, as if the silence itself might bleed more words, but it didn't. Only faint handwriting, barely visible beneath the lamplight. A single word. A name, Victoria. Thomas leaned closer, his voice was barely audible. Do you know anyone named Victoria? I didn't answer at first. The name felt like something I should recognize, but it drifted through my mind like perfume from a place I hadn't been in years. I looked up. He was frozen, pale again. Then, quietly, yes. I think I might. The way he said it, the pause, the hesitation, something in me went cold. Who is Victoria? I asked again. The air between us was sharp, dense with the kind of fear that comes before revelation. Thomas turned toward the window. The final daylight was dissolving behind the trees, and his reflection looked like his father's. Same jawline, same secret. I haven't heard that name in years, he murmured, but I think Dad mentioned her once, before the crash. He hesitated, running his hand along the chair's edge. She helped him complete something important. The words fell heavy, half-formed, like they carried their own weight of guilt. Complete what? I whispered. He didn't answer, just looked away as though whatever memory lingered was too tangled to touch. That night, after Thomas went upstairs, I stayed behind. The dining table felt too large, the house too awake. I unfolded the letter once more. The ink seemed older now, older than grief, older than forgiveness. I traced the loops of David's handwriting, the same careful strokes that once filled grocery lists, notes, reminders stuck to mirrors, the same hand that once reached for mine under soft kitchen light, and suddenly, I remembered. 26 years earlier. A rainy afternoon. A forgotten scarf. A note tucked neatly into my mailbox. Hello, I believe this belongs to you. That was how David first entered my life, quietly, without demand. I was teaching painting classes at the community arts center back then. He handled maintenance, tools, repairs, always smelling faintly of pine and varnish. The studio carried the scent of turpentine and possibility. And David, he observed color like it had secrets. You really shouldn't climb that ladder in those shoes, he said once, smiling, and you really shouldn't distract women holding paintbrushes. I shot back. We laughed, the kind of laughter that builds a home long before walls exist. Within weeks, he started leaving coffee for me, a disposable cup, always with the same line written in ink on the sleeve. Don't forget to breathe. I didn't know then how much I'd need those words later. Years blurred together. The house, the child, the comfort. Thomas grew, love aged, routine arrived like polite gravity. David and I stopped saying the things that once mattered. Love didn't lead. It just hid, beneath bills, work, and the silent rituals of endurance. Then came the diagnosis, that word that rearranges everything. The laughter dimmed. Conversations became lists, appointments, prescriptions, finances, oxygen levels, and then one morning he simply stopped answering. David, please talk to me, I begged. He smiled faintly, not the smile of reassurance, but the kind that says I'm already halfway gone. Some things, he murmured, are better left unspoken, Margaret. And then silence again. A silence that stretched through years, through walls, through Thomas, until now his words had found their way back. You'll understand what I mean when you see her name, Victoria. The name echoed in my head, not like a stranger's, but like something unfinished, something that had always been waiting at the edge of our life, watching. I stared at the letter until my eyes blurred. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows, like it, too, was trying to listen, and for the first time in years I whispered into the empty house, as though David could still hear me. Who is she? The drawer was empty. No more paper. No more answers, just the faint scent of cedar and thyme. Then he must have written the letter afterward, I thought, after the silence began swallowing him whole. Morning arrived reluctant, gray light spilling across the kitchen tiles. Thomas entered quietly, a small wooden container in his hands. He placed it on the table between us, its surface marked with scratches, like it had been handled by years of secrets. I found this in the workshop, he said softly. It was hidden behind Dad's old toolbox. When he lifted the lid, the smell of dust and varnish escaped, a familiar, unsettling scent. Inside were Polaroids, some ghosted by time, others vivid, painfully alive. And then I saw her. David stood beside a woman, raven hair, gentle eyes. Sunlight caught her shoulder like a blessing. On the back, in David's handwriting, Victoria, 1997. My breath stuttered. Who is this? Thomas turned the photo over, examining the background, bare wooden frames, beams half raised. A house still in the making. He looked up. Is that this house? I studied the image again, the angle of the light, the slope of the unfinished roof line, even the tree behind them, that same oak that now brushes our bedroom window. Yes, I whispered, I think it is. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Bits of paper, dates that didn't match our timeline, colors that weren't mine. Inside the container were sketches, paint swatches, notes on light and space, all dated before our marriage. But what hollowed me most was a folded blueprint at the very bottom. Bennett Residence. The title read underneath, in his sharp, familiar script, David Bennett, and beside it, in elegant cursive, a second name, Victoria Winters. My hands trembled. She helped design this house. Thomas looked confused. But you and Dad built it together. You always said. I know what I said, I cut in softly, but maybe I didn't know the whole story. The words hung between us like dust in sunlight, visible, fragile, refusing to settle. That night, Sleep abandoned me. I walked through the house barefoot, each step echoing differently, as though the walls themselves were listening. The arched entryway I'd always admired. Was that her curve, the bay window, her dream of light, the built-in shelves, his promise to finish her vision? For the first time, I felt like a guest in my own life. At dawn, Thomas found something else. A steel lockbox tucked beneath the workshop floorboards. He pried it open, and the hinges wailed like a confession. Inside were letters, all addressed to Victoria, none ever sent. We read them in silence. The air grew thick, every word another small fracture in memory. Dear Victoria, I wish I could explain why I never completed what I promised. You deserved better than my silence. Dear Victoria, every time I look at this house, I see your dreams built into its walls. I'm sorry I couldn't finish them the way you imagined. Dear Victoria, I found someone who makes me believe in second chances, but I'll never forget what you gave me first. By the last one I could barely breathe, but it was different, addressed not to her but to Thomas, dated 1 week before David's passing. Thomas looked at me. Should I open it? Yes, I whispered, he wrote it for you. He unfolded the letter, his hands unsteady. Son, if I'm not here when you become the man I hoped you'd be, remember this, strength isn't silence. I made that mistake too long. Speak when you love. Speak when you're afraid. And if you ever feel lost, take care of her for me. Thomas stopped, his voice cracked open, and tears found their way down his face. He knew I'd be here, he said quietly. I reached for his hand, he always did. We sat in the workshop, the smell of old sawdust, the ghosts of unfinished projects, and for the first time the silence felt lighter, like forgiveness had crept in quietly and was waiting to be noticed. Then, as Thomas began placing the letters back, something thin slipped from beneath them, a folded document, its edges yellowed, ink faint but legible. It wasn't a letter. It was a property deed. And beneath our names, David Bennett and Margaret Bennett, was another written in that same delicate cursive, Victoria Winters. There was a third signature, not faint, not forgotten, deliberate, Victoria Winters. My pulse tripped. What is this? Thomas took the paper, scanning it slowly. It says the property was co-owned, signed before you and Dad married. The words didn't hit all at once, they arrived like slow rain, soft, then heavy, until everything was soaked in realization. David hadn't just promised to build the house for her. He had promised it to her, and when he brought me here, he brought me into someone else's dream. Mom, Thomas whispered, his voice trembling somewhere between defense and disbelief. Did you know? I shook my head. No, he looked torn, caught between loyalty and confusion, like he wanted to protect both of us and couldn't. Maybe he changed it later, he said quickly. Maybe he meant to fix it. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to, but the paper didn't lie. Ink doesn't know mercy. The house we'd filled with birthdays, storms, and laughter had begun as someone else's love story. A soft wind slipped through the open door, lifting the loose pages from the floor. One brushed against my hand. I picked it up. 4 words scrawled in David's familiar handwriting. Forgive me. She deserved peace. I folded it slowly, my throat aching, but it wasn't anger that lived there. It was something gentler, understanding. Finally unclenched. What do we do now? Thomas asked. I turned toward the window. Beyond the field, white roses bent in the wind like quiet witnesses. Tomorrow, I said, we find her. Morning arrived, damp and forgiving. The air still smelled of rain and turned earth. We drove in silence. The wooden box sat on Thomas's lap, the letters inside shifting softly with each turn. Neither of us spoke. Truth has a weight that doesn't need sound. We found her where the gravel road curved into the hillside, a small painted gate, a garden bursting with wild roses, and a woman standing there, older, composed, as though she had already been waiting for us. I thought you might come, she said. Her voice carried no surprise, only peace. I stepped forward, my heart steady but full. We found the letters, I said, and the deed. Her eyes flickered. So, you know everything? I do, I whispered, but I don't understand why he never told me. She took a slow breath. Because he was trying to protect everyone, including you. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of roses between us. I loved him once, she said quietly, but when he met you, Margaret, I knew he'd finally found peace. He bought the house for me, yes, but he gave it meaning when he brought you there. Her words landed softly like rain falling on open hands. She looked at Thomas then. Your father used to say you were the bridge between two hearts that never should have broken. Thomas blinked, startled. He said that? Victoria smiled faintly. He did. He said love isn't meant to stay in one lifetime. Sometimes it moves from one person to another until it finds its home. I felt my eyes sting, and just like that, the anger I thought I'd feel never came, only gratitude. David hadn't betrayed me. He had carried love the only way he knew how, by building something enduring from what was once broken. Victoria reached into her basket and handed me a small envelope, its edges soft with time. This was inside one of his old sketchbooks, she said. He asked me to give it to you if the house ever felt heavy. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside, his handwriting again, still familiar, still alive. Margaret, if you're reading this, it means the truth has found its way home. I built that house for two women who taught me what love really means. One showed me how to begin again, and the other showed me how to stay. If the walls ever feel like they're holding too many memories, open the window. The air there still belongs to you. At the very bottom, faintly, in pencil, as if written when his hands had already begun to fail. Tell Thomas the first kept my promise. I built her bench under the window. I folded the letter, my tears quiet, my heart impossibly still. Outside, the roses swayed again, white against the gray light, and I finally understood. The house wasn't haunted by what came before. It was held up by it. The world seemed to pause. The rain stopped mid-sentence. Somewhere, unseen, a bird began to sing, as if to remind us that silence never lasts forever. When I opened my eyes again, Victoria was smiling through tears. He was right, she whispered. You gave that house its soul. I stepped forward and held her, not as a rival, not as a stranger who once lived in the shadow of my marriage, but as another woman who had loved a good man in her own time. For the first time, it didn't hurt to say goodbye. By the time Thomas and I drove back, the storm had passed. Sunlight broke through the clouds in slanted beams, touching the roof, the field, the roses, as if blessing everything that had once been broken. Thomas stood in the doorway, his frame outlined by the light spilling into the living room. Feels different now, he said quietly. It does, I replied. He turned, eyes gentle, the same eyes his father had when he was trying not to cry. What will you do with the house? I looked around, the framed painting on the wall, the white roses nodding outside, the chair under the window where the air still remembered his touch. Keep it, I said finally, but not as a memory. As a beginning. Thomas smiled. I think Dad would like that. The afternoon unfolded softly. We spent hours in the workshop organizing, sorting through his things, boxes of sketches, unfinished letters, fragments of thoughts written in a hand that was too tired to finish them. Every word was an apology wrapped in tenderness. Every page was proof that love, real love, is never neat. As the sun began to set, I found one last envelope, wedged under the wooden container. It wasn't addressed to me, nor to Thomas. It said, in that same familiar hand, to whoever finds this home next. I hesitated before opening it, half expecting his voice to rise from the page. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and dust, the scent of something that has waited patiently to be found. If you are reading this, take care of the garden. The white roses have roots deeper than you can see. They grow best when loved by someone who's known both loss and hope. That's what this place was built for, not to hold pain, but to help it bloom into something kind. I smiled through tears. He wrote this for everyone, I whispered. Thomas leaned close, his shoulder brushing mine. He left a piece of himself everywhere. I nodded. That's what love does. Outside, the wind passed through the garden, scattering petals across the porch. One landed softly on the open letter, white, translucent, almost glowing in the amber light. I looked up at the fading sky and felt something inside me finally, rest. David's love hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. It lived in us now. I and the creak of the floorboards, in the hum of the evening air, in every quiet act of care that would follow. Thomas closed the window gently. You okay, Mom? I smiled. I am now. The last light of day fell across the room, gold and forgiving. It touched the old painting still hanging on the wall, Victoria's painting of the house, the one that started it all, and for a moment, just before the light disappeared, the house in the frame almost looked alive again.